Hi, this is Alicia Hannah-Kim, and you are watching The Permanent Rain Press.
Hi everyone, it's Chloe with the Permanent Rain Press. Today I'm so excited to be joined by Alicia Hannah-Kim. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be chatting with you. I just love your character this season. But before we get into Cobra Kai, I wanted to start with, I know that you maintain an active lifestyle, notably through climbing and horse riding. So what can you share about your love for these sports and how they came to be?
Yeah, I am pretty active. I think the rock climbing came through my husband because he's quite an enthusiastic rock climber. So when we first started dating, I sort of threw myself into that to make a good impression. And I do climb occasionally still. I think COVID really took a toll on going into the gym and climbing in the gym. It does rip the hands a lot, so it's quite an intense sport. And funnily enough, I am afraid of heights, so it's very confronting for me. But I really, really enjoy it, and horse riding as well. I used to ride quite a lot, but I had quite a catastrophic accident in 2015, and so I broke my arm in three places when I fell off a horse that I was jumping. So I haven't ridden as much lately, but I would say it is my favorite thing to do on earth is to ride a horse.
I hope you do get back into it, even slowly. I know, like, once you
Yeah.
mentioned an accident, it can be a bit traumatic, but I'm glad it
Yeah.
still brings you peace. I know you do love
Completely.
horses and being near them. When did you start martial arts training? Because that's something that you did before the show as well.
I would say, I didn't do it when I was younger, funnily enough. My brother did Taekwondo, but I didn't. I was doing sort of more dance, ballet kind of things. And when I moved to LA, when you start auditioning and trying, it's very clear as an Asian actor that you should have some sort of foundational knowledge of martial arts. And so I remember I started training in Muay Thai, which I really loved. It's Thai kickboxing. It's a very intense, dirty sport, and everything smells like feet in the gym. But I would say that was sort of my first introduction to martial arts was through Muay Thai. But for the show, once I had booked the role, I did that sort of classic Hollywood thing, and I went to a Taekwondo tojang near my home. And I said to the master of the dojang, teach me everything you know in 1 hour. I was like, you have 1 hour to teach me everything you know. And he was game. He taught me all the kicks and sort of walked me through it. I don't know if I was able to replicate what he was teaching me, but I was open to receiving.
Probably one of the most productive 1 hours in your
Yes.
life.
I love that he was so game. Master Kwan of Taryong Brentwood. He was like, okay, let's do it. I was like, let's do it. And then I remember filming it. And when I watch it now, my kicks are quite comedic, actually, looking back on it. I think I've improved since then.
Something cool on Instagram is you have your own version of wax on, wax off, which is yoga sanding. So I just wanted to bring light to that, which is really innovative for the stretching and the balance. Um,
Mhm.
Unfortunately, we don't have too much time to get into it, but maybe I'll put a clip of the video in this interview so people can try it at home. But before your audition and being cast in Cobra Kai, what was your familiarity with the show and the Karate Kid universe?
I wish I could lie on this question and say that I was, so well versed in that in the story, but I wasn't. I for some reason had not seen it when I was younger, and somehow had missed it as well on Netflix. I spent a lot of the pandemic watching K dramas, so that's probably why I was so immersed in other things. But I was not aware of the intense fandom, the rich history, and even when I was auditioning for the show, it was under another name because it's very secretive. And so I did not know a lot. And I was filming another show at the same time. It's called Minx on HBO Max. And so I didn't have a lot of time to prep. So when I was on the plane going to Atlanta, I was sitting there sort of binge watching Cobra Kai on my iPad. And I was laughing out loud. I mean, it's such a great show. And Billy is so funny. So I was cramming it before I got to set. And then when I got to set, a lot of people filled me in on a lot of backstory. And as I was filming, I picked it up.
So in terms of your character, what were you told about Kim Da-Eun early on? And I know that you said it was very collaborative, her origins between yourself and your creators. So can you elaborate a bit upon that?
Yeah, when I first auditioned and when I first saw the sides, you could immediately feel how much power this woman had. In the scenes that I was given, she was very much pulling the strings of every one of those scenes, and so immediately that's appealing to me as an actor, of course. When I booked the role and got on set, I remember my first scene was at the airport. My first scene was coming out of the private jet. I was like, what is life? I'm suddenly in this private jet, you know. And that day, Josh Heald was on set at the airport. And so he came up to me and sort of welcomed me to set and gave me the backstory and told me how important this character was to the universe. And I had no idea when I was auditioning or when I booked it that she was the granddaughter of Kim Son-young and was so richly embedded into this Karate Kid history. So that was a very pleasant surprise on my first day. And then as we sort of progressed through the season, one by one, the creators would come up to me and sort of give me a little tidbit, or this is where we envision this going, or this is why she behaves this way because she has this history with this character. So I felt really supported. I mean, it's a really important thing for an actor, especially when you're coming onto an established show. When you are coming onto an established show, you want to just get in there and support and fit in and do the right thing. And they made it so easy for me to feel comfortable and part of that world. Like, they were so inclusive to me. And in terms of like the collaboration, I think giving me a lot of the history of the character before important scenes. And also when we were early on sort of deciding on her voice, obviously I have an Australian accent. And we wanted to other her from all the people in the Valley. But she's also completely and utterly bilingual. She's not struggling with English in any way. I mean, I don't think Kim Da-Eun struggles with anything. Maybe emotions, maybe like soft, gentle emotions. But yeah, so her English skills are obviously a result of intense study. We sort of came up with this, she probably studied in Britain, as a lot of very wealthy Korean kids do. They study abroad. And so her voice is an amalgam of her Korean accent and her upbringing and her education. And those things are, it seems small, but it is very, very important to me as an actor. And more than that, even in a representation term, because, it's kind of rare that we see a character as sort of global and powerful and supported as Kim Da-Eun. That's really the work of the creators.
Thank you for sharing that. I just love to hear. And like you mentioned, it is really important because her backstory gives your character purpose and motivation and the culture that shapes her. So you mentioned a bit about childhood. We saw that little clip when she's a little girl watching her grandfather train. What do you imagine her life is like in South Korea today, prior to her hopping on that jet to go meet Terry Silver?
Yeah, I think she is in a very powerful position in South Korean society. I think there's a lot of mystery surrounding her family, and I think there's a lot of how can I say it in a way that's not spoilery? Maybe that
this will be out after it's out.
It will come after.
You can feel free to.
Well, I think her grandfather's methods are controversial in the most euphemistic way that I can put it, and I think she guards her family's traditions and honor very fiercely. And I think, she is described as being the most fierce practitioner of Tangsudo, of her grandfather's karate tradition. So I imagine that she's quite comfortable in her place in society in South Korea. I think she knows her place wherever she goes. As opposed to me all over the place, but she's very much rooted in her story, in her place in society. I love that scene of mini Kim Da-Eun, watching Kreese and Silver fighting. Most of all for the pink gi. The pink gi was so cute. And the little ponytail. I wish I had gotten to meet the actress who played Mini Me, but she was in another shooting location, so I didn't meet her.
Definitely older Kim Da-Eun would not be wearing the pinky. A little bit more fierce than that. But speaking
Yeah.
about Tang Soo-do, tell me about working with the show's stunt coordinators, the fighters, and how you managed to sharpen your skill set.
It was very hard and fast early on. Like, I got off the plane, I was driven straight to the stunt gym, and I immediately met, actually the first cast member I met was Mary, who's just a ball of sunshine. And then I met Selkie Hom is my stunt double, and Jake Huang, who plays Sensei Hyun-woo, and Don Lee, Ken Bearfield, Olivia Brown. This stunt team is just top class. They're incredibly supportive. That's the thing about Cobra Kai. And one of the things that I always talk about in interviews is just how warm and supportive the environment is, because it is really rare. And I think that comes through in the show. But yeah, I was thrown straight into training, but I was pretty confident. I think ignorance is bliss, and I am very flexible. I've done a lot of yoga. I think physically I thought I could handle myself. As much as it is about fight training, it is so much about learning choreography, because it's like a dance. And so I was in the gym straight away with Peyton, Una, Selkie, and I just thought, oh God, this is going to be the most fun job ever, because suddenly you're in there and you're like blocking. And actually, when I first started, sort of, this is a very uncool anecdote for me. I probably shouldn't say it, but I was doing the sound effects when they're teaching me the moves, and I was so into it. I was like, and then I stopped and I go, oh God, I'm sorry, I'm doing my own sound effects. So
that's so great. You're feeling the movements. I mean, I think there's no harm in that, except it's funny that no one told you. You just had to realize yourself that you were doing it.
It would be so nice to me, because I was just sort of so enthusiastically just like, and then I stopped myself, and then I never did it again.
You're too embarrassed. You're like, it can't happen again.
Yeah.
Tell me about your favorite scene. Which was your favorite scene to be a part of, and why?
Ooh, it's hard to say. I think my favorite scene is probably my scene with Tory, where I force her, I push her past her limit. It's sort of a culmination of the way I've been treating her all season. And I really reach in and twist as much as I can to break her. And just when I watch that scene, I'm like, oh no, and the music, and it builds and builds and builds into this awful injury for her. And yeah, I think that's sort of the penultimate scene between Tory and Kim Da-Eun, and I think it's what is the deal breaker for her. It's the straw that breaks the camel's back for her to move on.
It was such a gripping scene, and working through that intensity must have been something like really hard. Was it hard for you, like to see Peyton go through that, or is it like easy to distinguish characters for you? Or I'm sure you feel some emotional discomfort there.
You know, I definitely felt that all through the season, because, you know, a lot of my scenes are with Peyton and Una, and they're both younger than me. And I really am in this position of power and in the scene. And you really feel that energy towards them of manipulation and intimidation. And so very much between takes, I would revert to myself and be sort of silly and sort of, you know, envelop them as much as I could in, like, you know, alley love, so that they were not, you know, feeling awful, because I genuinely felt bad after every take, because I'm so terrible to those two lovely girls. But they're great, they're professional, and, you know, we're like sending each other finger hearts through the scene, and Una's trying to make me laugh, and, you know, it's a great environment. But I definitely felt sensitive to taking care of them in between those scenes, because it's not nice to have to do that to them. It's very apologetic.
It wasn't, but I like to hear that in between scenes, you know, it's all love and some serious girl power between all three of you. I wanted to talk about a funny scene, episode 6, which is where Kim mistakes Johnny for Daniel LaRusso, because I could not stop laughing during that scene. What was it like filming, keeping that straight face? And you
Ah,
mentioned power. I mean, the power she held in that room, she was unflinching when he said, "I'm not Daniel."
yeah, it's funny. That was my first time meeting Billy, obviously, and I just did not know how funny he would be in terms of improv too. So I remember he improved a couple of things. I don't know if it made the final cut, but he improved a couple of things. And the whole time I was looking at him, I was just like, don't break, don't break, don't break, don't break, because he's so funny. But that's a great scene, and it's a great line, because it's just such a petty little put down for him. I like that she's come in and she's immediately ascertained, like, this is a rivalry and I can stick, a claw in there. But yeah, I mean, this show is laugh out loud funny. I laugh every time I hear Billy's delivery back to me. And I love his like little side by side look too, It was great.
He's like just making sure no one was there. Daniel wasn't standing there. Now, if Kim Da-Eun had it her way, how exactly would she, like, this is back in South Korea, how would she swat these mosquitoes? Because it seems like she has even worse ideas than Silver.
Yeah, I think so. I think if we were in South Korea, oh, they just wouldn't have a chance. I think it would be much more violent, much more, it would be a lot quicker to swat those little insects.
I was thinking she might resort to some kind of murder, like, not gonna lie, the way she says it. Because, I mean, Silver would pay off referees, which I'm sure she supports, but she would definitely do something a bit more lethal.
Yeah, I think what her value system is, it's culturally different. I think Terry Silvers is very much tied into this sort of American capitalism. He's very wealthy. We get a sense that Kim Da-Eun is definitely not, wanting in that department. But I think that her methods are probably going to be much more unforgiving and less room for error. That's what I would guess at.
I like that way of framing it, because as you mentioned, it's something culturally, it's something like to do with values. Now, season finale, take me through some of those dojo scenes, and particular also, you got to spar with Mary and Peyton at the same time, but then watching Silver lose to Daniel LaRusso because she looked absolutely disgusted at what was going on.
That's a great look. I think every Korean woman, dare I say every Asian woman, is very good at that look. Okay, so season finale was the most fun to shoot because we had this giant, I think Cobra has this great tradition every season finale, this massive group fight. And we had this sort of thrilling day where there were just scores of people in the dojo, and it was one long continuous shot. I'm not sure if it's edited that way now, but the way that we shot it was continuous. And so I had this moment where the camera would come around, everyone would begin, Peyton and I would fight, and then I would run out of the scene behind Don, who was following the camera, and we would snake around the dojo and we were running at this point and filming until I had to pop back in and fight Mary and Peyton. So that was thrilling just to film, it felt really fun. But I loved finally getting to fight Mary. She's great. She's so sweet. I remember when right before they called action, we're sort of on the ground, and I think I have her in a chokehold. So I'm like, okay, come here, let's snuggle. And I have her like this, and we're laughing about something like action. And it's like, and I'm like, that's Cobra, like right before everybody's super warm and friendly. And then it's just like all bets are off. And then there's just yelling and screaming and chaos, and the most fun to shoot. And it was great that Tory and Sam could work together as well. That's like the culmination of their relationship through 5 seasons of animosity, and seeing them come together and be on the same side is, I think, going to be really satisfying for the viewer.
So given the ending, what is running through her mind? Where do you think she goes from here?
I hope we see much, much more of Kim Da-Eun. I think that her alliance with Silver is dead and gone. You know, he's been vanquished in a way that disgusts her completely. And I think it's very interesting to see where she'll go next, to sort of elevate her family's legacy. I think, you know, there's a lot of possibilities.
There is a wild crease on the loose, someone that she also knows. So
yes.
Who knows? I mean, the speculations, I'm sure, just even after Friday will run wild. But working so closely with Thomas Ian Griffith, do you remember what it was like meeting him for the first time, and what was that experience throughout the season?
Oh, he is such a gentleman. You know, and he's this like beautiful Renaissance man. He can sing and he writes and he acts, and his most beautiful wife. He's a really sort of well-rounded, wonderful gentleman. And I met him in the van heading to the airport for the first time. He was very kind, and we sort of talked about our lives in LA. And the thing about Thomas is that I think he's 6'4". Is he 6'4" or 6'6"? I don't know. Some fan is going to tell me for sure, but he's incredibly tall. And so acting with him is just being overwhelmed by his height and his stature. But he couldn't be lovelier. And I love that, you know, his characters has come through all these years, from Karate Kid 3 all the way to Cobra Kai. And, you know, what a journey for an actor, for a performer. It's really wonderful. Please, you guys, call me in 30 years. Like, I am so available to come down out of my little cottage in the woods, hopefully. And
I know, and the Cobra Kai, like, they'll do another spin-off with maybe new characters. Though obviously we want the show to last for many years, but in 30 years you're putting it out there. You'll be fine to come back.
Clearing my schedule.
That's a perfect idea. Now moving on, I wanted to talk about your piece for Salon, because it was such a personal and powerful narrative. It detailed you learning Korean during the pandemic, internalized racism, your heritage. What inspired you to share your story?
It was very, very personal, and I was very uncomfortable writing it, because I think, you know, when you're an actor, you can really hide in your work. But I discovered, my God, how uncomfortably personal writing is. There's nowhere to hide, and it's as if someone just takes a seat in your head when they read it. So I was in Vancouver, and you know, it was pandemic, you know, deeply into the K-dramas, deeply into my Korean lessons, you know, deeply into staying home. And I remember it was around the time of the Atlanta spa shootings. And, you know, I guess I'm just really lucky to have grown up in Australia, but I did not witness or remember witnessing anything where women who looked like my mom or had our names were sort of listed on a news bulletin of being shot and targeted. That it really struck me, and it hurts. For all of us, it really hurts. You know, when the victim looks like you, that pain is so personal. And I was thinking about like my own journey and into learning Korean, and sort of, I wrote it as a release for myself. I'm certainly not a writer, and I did not think it would go anywhere. I wrote it on my laptop one day just at home, and I sent it to a writer friend of mine, and she said, you should send this out. This should be published. And of course I'm like, but I've never written anything before. Like, how would that work? You know, and luckily Salon really wanted to publish it. So that was huge to me, that the first thing I ever wrote was suddenly published. And, you know, I meant every word. It's a very sincere piece for me that really comes from the soul, which is like uncomfortable because you're being seen, and it's so personal. But it's also really joyful, because I realized how separated I was from my Asian heritage, from my Korean heritage, and also truly, and I think I talked about this, how starved I was for representation in a way that I had really never reflected on deeply. I'd never thought about, you know, everybody always asks me about representation. And when was the first time you saw yourself represented? But we don't ask non-BIPOC people this question because it's just a given. But we definitely ask ourselves because it is scarce. It's that scarce. And I think I was sort of in the space of like, I'm fine. I can just exist, and I'm good. I can watch whatever I want. And sure, there's no one like me in Game of Thrones, but that's fine. And watching K-dramas and just, Korean entertainment right now is just excellence across the board. And it made me feel seen and heard, and to see your face represented back to you it's deeply healing and powerful. I hope, there's plenty more cases now of representation for Asian women, for BIPOC people. I hope that a young girl will watch me on Cobra and say, oh, I have a face like hers. I have a name like her. That reflection is deeply important in a way I think non-BIPOC people can't ever understand in Western media.
I just really enjoyed that piece, and thank you for sharing your thoughts about that. We'll also link it at the bottom of this interview. I know, just speaking on the Korean side, you mentioned that it's become a new form of communication between you and your family, and I hope that trip to Seoul is still on the agenda for you and your mom when the time is right. We have a couple more questions for you. You mentioned being deep in K-dramas, and I know you're also a K-pop fan, so quickly, your top favorites at the moment between the two.
Like my favorite question in the interview. Okay, my favorites. Okay, my favorite Korean drama of all time, and it's very atypical because it's not one of these like fantastical romantic dramas. My favorite Korean series of all time is a series called My Mister, and I can't speak to how exquisite the series is. It's incredibly human and moving and quiet, and it just breaks you. That's my biggest recommendation to anybody. But of course, like I started with like Crash Landing on You. I love Goblin. I just watched Extraordinary Attorney Woo, which to the young to the ooh, I love. I'm watching Little Women now because I'm a huge Kim Da-Eun fan. I watched Boys Over Flowers. My God, that was just so addictive. The best. These are the best. So The King, Eternal Monarch. It's Okay Not to Be Okay. I love them all. I love every single one. It's like my favorite topic of conversation. And then with K-pop, because of My Mister, I became this massive IU fan. So I love IU. She's just a pure artist. And I'm also a huge Blink. I love Blackpink.
Those are good recommendations. I'll have to add them to my list. You also did a TikTok dance to a Blackpink song at one point. I don't know where it went, but it's on the internet and it's a good one. We have one more question, our signature question. If you could be any ice cream flavor, which would you be and why?
Any ice cream flavor? I love like a butterscotch caramel. I really felt that. I was reaching in. I was like mint chocolate chip. We have this glorious thing in Australia called a rainbow paddle pop, which I also love, but I love caramel. Caramel is my weakness. Butterscotch.
I love that answer. It's a great way to end things off. I'd like to thank you so much, Alicia, for taking the time to chat. Really appreciate it. Can't wait for everyone to see you in the show. Make sure to watch Cobra Kai on Netflix. Season 5 is out now, and we will see you next time.
Bye. Thank you.